Imagine for a second that you are standing on a massive river of ice. The air is so thin, your lungs are literally burning, the temperature is just plummeting, and you are hopelessly, terrifyingly lost.
Yeah, that is not a good situation.
No, it's a nightmare. You've just failed to climb the second highest mountain on the planet. You are emaciated, totally exhausted, and you're stumbling down this 39-mile stretch of the Baltoro Glacier in the Himalayas.
Right.
You don't have a master plan. You don't have, like, a boardroom or a strategic committee or some slick venture capital pitch deck. You are literally just trying to survive the night.
And, it is the absolute last place on Earth you would ever expect a massive, geopolitically significant humanitarian movement to be born.
Exactly.
Because when we look at global change,
Yeah.
we naturally assume there was this deliberate, engineered starting point. But this begins with a guy simply making a wrong turn on a mountain.
Which is exactly why I could not put this material down. We are taking you on a deep dive today into the staggering true story behind that wrong turn.
It's quite the journey.
It really is. We've been looking through a really fascinating stack of sources, excerpts, maps, character glossaries, and the foreword by Khalida Hosseini from a book called Stones into Schools.
Subtitled, Promoting Peace with Books, Not Bombs, in Afghanistan and Pakistan, by Greg Mortenson.
Right. And our mission today is to explore something that sounds simple on paper, but is unbelievably complex in reality. We're talking about the profound cascading impact of educating girls in some of the most remote, volatile, and just geographically extreme regions on Earth.
Yeah, and we're going to dig into the extreme patience, the grueling relationship building, and the highly unlikely alliances required to actually make this happen.
I am so excited to unpack this with you.
Me too. And to really grasp the sheer scale of what's happening in these sources, we first have to ground ourselves in the physical reality of the geography.
Oh, absolutely. The maps.
The maps provided in this text are absolutely essential to understanding the narrative. Because, we aren't talking about building a school in a rural farming town accessible by a paved highway.
Not even close.
No. We are talking about the Hindu Kush. We are talking about the Karakoram Range. We are looking at the Wakhan Corridor.
Which is just wild to look at on a map.
Right. It's this incredibly narrow, high-altitude strip of land in Afghanistan that reaches out like a long finger to touch the border of China.
Yeah, looking at these maps, it looks less like a landscape and more like a geological fortress. You have these valleys completely walled off from one another by some of the highest, most unforgiving mountain peaks on the planet.
It's an environment that naturally enforces isolation. And that isolation, it breeds extreme ethnic and linguistic diversity.
Right, because nobody is crossing those mountains casually.
Exactly. So in a relatively small geographic footprint, you have Pashtun, Tajik, Wakhi, and Kyrgyz populations all living in these separated pockets. They have entirely different customs, different power structures, and different ways of surviving the 6-month-long winters.
And that geographic fortress is exactly where we need to start. Because before we can dive into the deeply personal stories of the individuals living in these valleys, we have to understand why the specific strategy of educating girls in these exact regions is viewed as an absolute game changer.
It's definitely not just a nice philanthropic gesture.
Right, it's not just charity. The author and the experts he cites refer to it as a force multiplier.
Which is fascinating because force multiplier is inherently a military term.
Yeah, it really is.
It means an attribute or a combination of attributes that make a given force more effective than it would be on its own. But here, the author is applying it to socioeconomics.
Right, and to understand the mechanics of why girls' education acts as this multiplier, we have to look at the data the author pulls from the World Bank, as well as the research of Yale economist Paul T. Schultz.
And the numbers they present are just wild.
They really are.
The baseline statistic they use is that just one single year of primary school boosts a woman's later income by 10 to 20%.
Wow, just 1 year.
1 year. And an extra year of secondary school raises her lifetime wages by another 15 to 25%.
But wait, let's unpack this for a second. Let's really look at the mechanics here. Because how does a girl learning basic reading and writing actually translate into a 20% income boost in a village that barely even has a cash economy?
That's a great point.
I mean, we aren't talking about someone getting a corporate promotion because they got a diploma, right?
No, not at all. That is the crucial question. And the mechanism behind it is entirely rooted in the daily realities of an agrarian lifestyle.
Okay.
In these remote communities, a woman's labor is central to survival. If she has basic literacy and numeracy, She can subtly read the instructions on a bag of fertilizer, optimizing the crop yield.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that.
Right. And when she takes goods to the local market, she can read the scales. She can calculate the exchange rate herself, meaning she's no longer reliant on or vulnerable to being swindled by middlemen who previously held all the power because they controlled the math.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. It's not about a formal paycheck. It's about shifting the power dynamics of everyday commerce and survival.
Exactly. Literacy is basically a shield against exploitation.
I love that way of putting it. But the benefits don't stop at raw economics, do they?
No, there is a deeply documented, cascading social effect. The data shows that in communities where a majority of girls are educated through the 5th grade, a profound demographic shift occurs.
Right.
They marry later. Consequently, they have fewer children, which leads to a lower, much more sustainable rate of population growth in regions where food security is a constant crisis.
And the text highlights that infant mortality drops significantly after just a single generation. Again, looking at how this isn't magic.
Right, it's practical knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If a mother can read, she can read the label on a bottle of antibiotics. She can read a pamphlet on water sanitation and understand the mechanism of boiling water to kill pathogens. She understands basic hygiene protocols that prevent the transmission of disease.
It fundamentally alters the physical survival rate of the community. But, the author takes this data and applies it to a deeply geopolitical realm.
Yeah, this part is really interesting.
The text builds a very controversial but fascinating argument regarding extremism. The author notes that in deeply patriarchal Muslim societies, there is an often overlooked dynamic.
Okay.
A young man who has been recruited into extremist violence will frequently seek his mother's permission, her blessing, before officially joining a militant jihad.
Now wait, let me play devil's advocate here for a minute. Are we really saying that a mother knowing how to read a 5th grade math book is enough to stop a teenager from joining an armed insurgency?
It sounds like a stretch at first glance.
Yeah, it seems like a massive, almost naive leap. How does the author actually connect those two dots? Just to be clear, we're just reporting what the author claims here, but it's a bold claim.
It is a bold claim. The author's argument hinges on the sociological shift that happens when a woman is educated. According to his findings, an educated mother is far more likely to have a broader understanding of the world outside her valley.
Okay, so she has more context.
Right. She is less susceptible to the localized propaganda that militant recruiters rely on. And because she holds this revered status as a mother in the cultural hierarchy, her refusal to grant that blessing acts as a massive psychological roadblock for the recruit.
So it's not that the math book stops the bullet, it's that the education provides the mother with the perspective and the confidence to withhold her social sanction, which breaks the recruitment cycle at its cultural root.
That is the exact mechanism the author is describing. And the source material claims this dynamic is so pronounced that following the events in 9/11 when the Taliban suffered increased desertions, they actively changed their recruitment strategy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they specifically began targeting their efforts on the most isolated, illiterate regions. They deliberately sought out valleys where female literacy was virtually non-existent, areas where this girl effect hadn't taken root.
That is a staggering way to view education. It completely recontextualizes what a school actually is.
It really does.
It explains why you have people like the former CNTCOM Commander General David Petraeus or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Admiral Mike Mullen suddenly deeply invested in a guy building rural classrooms.
Exactly.
The text actually points out that the author's previous book was required reading for military officers in counterinsurgency courses at the Pentagon. It's like viewing a classroom not just as a place of learning, but as the ultimate peaceful defense system.
Because it proves that humanitarian aid, when applied strategically, isn't just about charity. It's viewed by these strategists as a calculated, highly effective socioeconomic strategy.
But here is the massive caveat to all of this data.
There's always a caveat.
Right. The macroeconomic statistics, the infant mortality rates, the geopolitical theories, they all make it sound incredibly simple. Build a school, educate a girl, stabilize a region, boom, done.
If only it were that easy.
Right, because when you zoom all the way in from the Yale data to the dirt floor of a valley in the Hindu Kush, the reality on the ground is almost impossibly difficult.
And there is no narrative in this material that illustrates that friction better than the story of Nasreen Beg.
Oh, Nasreen's story is just incredible.
It really forces us to look at exactly what it costs one single girl to get that education.
let's set the scene for Nasreen. She lives in Zudkhan. This is a tiny Pakistani village in the Sharperson Valley, located in the extreme north, just incredibly isolated.
Very harsh conditions.
Extremely. And when she was young, she was brilliant. She starts attending a co-educational school in 1984, and she is consistently one of the top students. But then the fragility of life in this region shatters everything.
Yeah, tragedy strikes.
In 1992, when she's 12 years old, her mother dies unexpectedly of pneumonia.
And in a subsistence farming community, the loss of a mother isn't just an emotional tragedy. It is an immediate economic crisis.
Right. Everything changes overnight.
Nasreen's life just stops. She is immediately forced to abandon her studies entirely. She has to take over the household, caring for her blind father and her 4 younger siblings.
And the situation gets worse. Her father eventually remarries, and her new stepmother is actively hostile to the very concept of Nasreen getting an education.
Hostile is putting it mildly.
Yeah, the stepmother literally taunts her. She tells Nasreen that books will poison her mind and make her a worthless wife and mother. But why the hostility? Why is a book seen as a poison?
We have to look at the power dynamics of the household. In the stepmother's view, a girl reading a book is a girl who isn't hauling firewood.
Right, she's not doing the chores.
Exactly, she's tending the goats. Education is viewed as an existential threat to the manual labor required to keep the family alive through the winter. The stepmother views intellectual ambition as a direct theft of Nasreen's physical labor.
But Nasreen has this vision that she just won't let go of. She remembers these roving government healthcare teams that used to come through the village when she was younger.
Those teams made a huge impression on her.
They really did. She remembers the workers in their white cloaks, the smell of the antiseptic, the spiral notebooks they used to track the baby's health. She decides, with absolute certainty, that she wants to be a maternal health care provider.
So what does she do?
So she waits until her stepmother and the rest of the family are asleep. And in the freezing cold, she studies late into the night by the incredibly dim light of a kerosene lantern.
Her sheer force of will pays off, though. By 1995, at age 15, she actually receives her high school degree.
Which is an amazing achievement.
It's massive. She is one of the first women from the entire Hunza region to ever achieve this. And then, 4 years later, what seems like the ultimate breakthrough arrives.
The scholarship.
Yes. In 1999, the Central Asia Institute, the CAI, the organization the author founded, offers her a scholarship. It's for $1,200 annually to become a trained maternal health care worker.
That $1,200 is everything. It covers tuition, room, and board for a full 2-year course. With that degree, she could cross the 16,335-foot pass into the Wakhan corridor of Afghanistan.
Which is where her ancestors are from.
Exactly. And where, tragically, more women die in childbirth than anywhere else on Earth. She could actively save lives. The path is completely beautifully clear.
But this is where the Western understanding of individual ambition clashes violently with the cultural structure of the region.
Yeah, this part was frustrating to read.
Because in Zudkhan, individual merit doesn't override communal duty. Nasreen is betrothed to a man the text bluntly describes as lazy, and her future mother-in-law, a woman named Bibi Nissa, realizes exactly what the stepmother realized.
That if Nasreen goes off to school for 2 years, the household loses its best laborer.
Exactly, so the mother-in-law objects.
And you might think, well, who cares? It's Nasreen's life. She has the scholarship money. Just go. But that's not how the architecture of power works here.
Not at all. Bibi Nissa takes her objection to local tanzim.
Okay, we need to explain the tanzim because this blew my mind. What exactly is a tanzim?
The tanzim is the local council of elders. In these hyper-isolated regions where there is no real state government presence, no police force, and no civil court, the tanzim decides all matters of importance.
So they're the ultimate authority.
Absolutely. They manage the water rights, the grazing land, and they settle the disputes.
It's like a homeowners association on steroids, but with the power of exile.
It's a good analogy.
If you defy the HOA in a suburb, you get a fine. If you defy the tanzim in a high-altitude desert, you are cut off from the communal support network that literally keeps you from freezing or starving to death. You cannot just pack a bag and walk away.
Exactly. So the issue goes before the tanzim. Now, bear in mind, there are no other qualified girls in the entire valley who have a high school diploma.
Nasreen is literally the only one.
The only one who could take the scholarship to become a healthcare worker. But the tanzim sides with the mother-in-law. They uphold the objection. Nasreen is officially forbidden from accepting the scholarship.
The door just slams shut, and the consequence of that ruling is brutal. Because for the next decade, 10 full years, Nasreen doesn't just sit in her room.
No, her life is incredibly hard.
The text details a life of grueling, relentless physical labor. We're talking 12 to 16-hour days. She is tending goats. She is hauling 80-pound bags of firewood and yak dung on her back to use as heating fuel during the brutal 6-month winters.
It's hard to even imagine.
Try to imagine the physical toll of carrying 80 pounds of yak dung at that altitude, knowing you had a fully funded ticket out of there that was ripped away from you.
And the irony is devastating. During this decade, she gives birth to 3 babies and suffers 2 miscarriages with absolutely no attendance from a maternal health care worker.
Oh.
She lives through the exact medical trauma she was trying to get an education to prevent.
It's heartbreaking, but here's where Nasreen's psychology completely subverts Western expectations. If I'm her, I am consumed by rage.
Oh, absolutely.
I am furious at the Tanzim, at the mother-in-law, at the whole system. But when things finally shift, she isn't.
She's incredibly at peace with it.
In 2007, the leadership of the Tanzim changes. A younger generation of elders steps in, and they set aside the opposition. Nasreen spends a year taking prep classes, and finally, in 2008, at the age of 29, she travels down the treacherous Karakoram highway to Rawalpindi to finally get her degree.
And her perspective on that lost decade is profound. She explicitly states that she harbors no bitterness.
Not at all.
She says that God taught her the lesson of patience and gave her the lived experience to truly understand what it means to live in deep poverty. She tells the author, "I do not regret the wait."
I just can't wrap my head around that level of grace. It is staggering.
It is. But what's really important sociologically here is that Nasreen's story perfectly encapsulates the ultimate barrier to the girl effect.
Right.
You can have all the Yale economic data, you can have a brilliant, willing student, and you can even have the Western funding sitting in a bank account. But if you do not have the blessing of the Tanzim, if you do not respect the local governance, absolutely nothing happens.
You cannot force progress from the outside. You have to wait for the community to invite it in.
Exactly.
Which is the perfect pivot to the core philosophy of this entire movement. Because the author learned this exact same lesson about local power, relationships, and agonizing patience very early on. This takes us all the way back to that glacier in 1993, the origin story.
Right. Let's look at what happens after he fails to climb K2. He gets lost on the Baltoro Glacier, and he eventually stumbles, half dead, into a destitute village called Corfe.
And to give you an idea of the brutal reality of Corfe at that time, 1 in 3 children died before the age of 1.
A 33% infant mortality rate.
And while the author is recovering there, eating their meager food, he sees something that fundamentally alters his life's trajectory. He sees 82 children sitting outside in the freezing dirt, writing their lessons with sticks in the frost.
No teacher, no classroom, no pencils.
Just dirt and sticks. And a young girl named Chocho looks at him, and he makes a promise on the spot that he will return and build them a school.
But a promise is easy. Execution is hard. This is where he meets his most important mentor, the village chief of Corfe, Haji Ali.
Haji Ali is such a great figure in this story.
He really is. And Haji Ali realizes very quickly that this American is rushing. He wants to build, build, build. So Haji Ali introduces him to the Balti philosophy of 3 cups of tea.
I love this concept so much. Let's really break this down.
It's a beautiful framework for human connection. Haji Ali explains it like this. The first time you share a cup of tea with someone, you are a stranger.
Okay.
The second time you share a cup of tea, you are an honored guest, a friend. But with the third cup of tea, you become family. And for their family, they would be willing to do anything, even die. But you cannot rush the tea drinking.
Which goes against every single instinct of a Western project manager.
Oh, completely.
We love fiscal quarters, we love rapid deployment, we love checking the box and moving to the next deliverable. And the author learns incredibly quickly that his timeline means absolutely nothing in the Karakoram.
He has a rude awakening.
He goes back to the States, sells everything he owns, his car, his climbing gear, his books, and raises the money. He buys a massive, literal ton of cement and lumber in Pakistan, ferries it up the treacherous Karakoram highway, transfers it to jeeps, and finally gets to the edge of the roaring Braldu River.
And this is where the logistics crash into reality. He arrives with all these building supplies, only to discover a terrifying fact.
The river crossing.
Yes. The only way across the Braldu River to the village of Corfe is a rickety, frayed wooden basket suspended beneath a 350-foot steel cable.
It's basically a makeshift zip line over a torrent of glacial meltwater that will instantly crush you if you fall in. You absolutely cannot transport lumber and cement in that basket.
The villagers look at him and tell him the hard truth. Before you can build the school, you have to build a bridge.
Now, let's pause and look at the psychology of this moment. If you are an outsider, you have the money, you have the lumber, you have the cement, wouldn't you feel an incredible pressure to just say, you know what, Corfu is too hard. I'm going to find an easier village on this side of the river and build a school there. It would be so much more efficient.
Efficient, yes, but it would violate the first cup of tea. He made a promise to Chocho, and he made a promise to Haji Ali.
Right.
If he abandons Corfu because the logistics are hard, he proves that his word is conditional. He proves he is just another Westerner who wants a quick photo op.
Exactly. The literal bridge over the river becomes the perfect defining metaphor for the entire mission. You cannot deliver the books until you build the trust.
It's foundational.
It's like trying to install a massive software update on a computer without plugging it into the power source first. The machine will just die mid-update. If he hadn't stayed and built the bridge with Corfu, he never would have reached that third cup of tea.
But building that bridge requires a staggering amount of time. It's a 282-foot suspension bridge. It takes 2 full years.
2 years just for the bridge.
Exactly. The author actually has to go back to his main benefactor, a Silicon Valley transistor pioneer named Dr. Gene Horney, and humbly ask for more money, explaining that he hasn't even started the school yet. It sets the entire project back by years.
But it cements his reputation. It proves he isn't leaving, and that reputation is the only currency that matters in these mountains.
That's very true.
The author gives another parallel example in the text that blew my mind. The village of Chunda.
Ah, yes. The Chunda Mullah. This perfectly illustrates the ponderous movement of the Karakoram glaciers when it comes to social change.
Tell us about the mullah.
Well, the local mullah in Chunda was immensely cautious, deeply pious, and fundamentally opposed to girls' education.
So what do? Do they fight him? Do they try to go around him? No, they sit down and drink tea. For 8 years.
8 years.
8 years of visiting, of talking, of respecting his authority, of slowly answering his questions and alleviating his fears. Think about the patience required to spend almost a decade courting one guy's permission. Most NGOs would lose their grant funding in year 2 and leave.
But what is the mechanism of that persuasion? Over those 8 years, the mullah is watching. He's watching to see if they disrespect local customs. He's watching to see if they force a Western curriculum.
He's testing them.
Exactly. He's watching to see if they abandon the project when it gets hard. And because they simply remain present and respectful, his fear dissolves. Today, because they waited him out, 300 girls attend school in Chunda with that exact same mullah's full enthusiastic support.
8 years to get one, yes. But it's a permanent yes. It's not a forced compliance. It's genuine cultural integration.
Which is the only way it lasts.
Right. So the ultimate question is, what happens when you combine the Yale economic statistics of the girl effect with the localized glacial patience of the 3 cups of tea?
That is when we see the definitive proof of concept. The text highlights the specific, triumphant success stories of the very first generation of Central Asia Institute graduates. We transition from theory and struggle to actual lived results.
Let's talk about Jahan Ali. She is the granddaughter of Haji Ali, the mentor from Corfu. She was the CAI's first female student to graduate from high school.
And she didn't just get her diploma and stop.
No, she used her education to access a maternal health program, and then she moved on to advanced studies in public policy administration. Now, here is where the sociological shift is fascinating. Because of her education, her bride price in the village skyrocketed from 5 rams to 50 rams.
Let's examine why that happens.
Yeah.
The concept of a bride price might sound regressive to a Western ear, but it functions as a direct metric of how the community values an individual.
Right.
Before, a girl's value was strictly based on her physical ability to labor. How much firewood she could carry, how many fields she could tend.
But Jahan's value jumped tenfold because the community recognized that her intellect, her ability to navigate public policy and bring resources back to the valley, was infinitely more valuable than her manual labor.
Precisely.
Yeah.
They shifted their entire metric of value. But Jahan is refusing to marry for now.
She's got bigger plans.
She has entirely different plans. She intends to become a community leader and eventually a member of Pakistan's parliament. Her quote in the text is wonderful. Inshallah, someday I will become a super lady.
A super lady. I love that. It's incredible. And she's not an anomaly. You have Shakila Khan from the Husha Valley. She was in the first graduating class there.
And she's doing amazing things now.
Yeah, now she's scoring in the 90s at Fatima Memorial Hospital in Lahore. She is on track to become the first locally educated female physician for the entire population of Baltistan.
Let's put that in perspective. Baltistan has a population of 300,000 people. The ripple effect of Shakila Khan's education means that hundreds of thousands of people will finally have access to a physician who intimately understands their culture, speaks their dialect, and respects their customs.
And we see exactly how powerful that local connection is with the story of Aziza Hussain.
Her story is incredible.
She grew up in the Hunza Valley. She graduated high school in 1997, completed a maternal health care program, and then, crucially, she returned home in 2000 to apply her skills. The text states that before she returned, as many as 20 women perished each year in that area during childbirth.
That's a tragically high number.
It is. But since she came back, not a single woman in the area has died giving birth. Zero.
And we have to ask how she brought that number to zero. It's not just that she has medical supplies, it's the mechanism of local trust. A woman in a highly conservative rural village might hide a pregnancy complication because she is terrified of being examined by a male doctor or a foreign doctor who doesn't understand her modesty customs. But Aziza is one of them. They trust her.
They can talk to her.
Right. They will tell her when something is wrong early enough for her to intervene. That intimate cultural fluency is what brings the mortality rate to zero.
It's the force multiplier in its purest form. The author, being a mountaineer, draws a beautiful comparison here. He looks at what Jahan, Shakila, and Aziza are doing, and he says they are achieving first ascents that totally dwarf anything the famous Western mountaineers accomplished on those exact same peaks.
That's a great metaphor.
You think about guys like Aleister Crowley trying to conquer K2 back in 1902. Their physical achievements are absolutely nothing compared to Aziza Hussain single-handedly ending maternal mortality in her valley.
But these success stories force us to confront one of the biggest fears in global development, the brain drain. The ongoing anxiety is that if you take brilliant individuals from remote, impoverished regions and give them advanced education, they will simply use that education to flee. They will get their medical degree and move to London or Dubai or New York for a more comfortable life.
But look at the pattern here. Jahan, Shakila, Aziza, none of them fled. They all went back. Why? Why would you go back to a valley with no electricity when you have a degree that could take you anywhere?
Because of the struggle it took to get that degree. Because their education wasn't just handed to them. It was negotiated by their elders, funded by a massive communal effort, and achieved against the backdrop of their own mothers and sisters' suffering.
It's a shared victory.
Exactly. The bond forged by that communal struggle creates a profound sense of duty. They aren't taking their education and leaving. They're actively choosing to return to heal and lead. That is the ultimate return on investment for the communities that allowed them to drink the tea in the first place.
Return on investment is an interesting phrase here because the source material takes a really sudden, jarring pivot away from the Himalayas right at this point.
It shifts gears completely.
We've spent all this time looking at the extreme poverty and the fierce determination in these valleys, but the author turns the camera around to show us who's actually writing the checks to buy the cement and the textbooks. And the contrast it sets up between global macroeconomic panic and individual micro-level generosity is just mind-blowing.
It's one of the most vivid scenes in the entire text. It takes place on September 18, 2008. The author is on a relentless speaking tour across the United States, trying to raise funds for the Central Asian Institute.
And we really need to set the historical stage of what America felt like in September 2008.
Oh, it was absolute panic.
The U.S. financial system is undergoing a catastrophic collapse. Lehman Brothers has just gone bankrupt. AIG is being bailed out by the government. The Dow Jones is in free fall.
It felt like the sky was falling.
People are watching the news tickers in sheer terror as their retirement accounts evaporate in real time. It felt like the entire capitalist system was melting down.
And right in the middle of that national panic attack, the author shows up to give a talk in Durango, Colorado.
A tiny town.
Durango is a small mountain town, population roughly 16,000. He is scheduled to speak at the Fort Lewis College gym. Logic dictates that in a moment of extreme economic contraction, people tighten their belts. They stop giving to charity. They hoard whatever cash they have left.
But that is not what happens. Despite the economic terror gripping the nation, 4,000 people show up to this gym to hear him speak. Think about that.
That's incredible.
That's nearly a third of the entire town turning out on a Thursday night. The fire marshal actually has to bar the doors and turn 300 people away because the building is dangerously over capacity.
And the composition of that crowd is vital. These aren't venture capitalists or billionaires looking for a tax write-off. With the exception of one $50,000 donation from the founder of the shoe company Crocs, the money raised that night comes from ordinary working-class citizens.
Everyday people.
Mechanics, dental hygienists, ranchers, public school teachers, people who are absolutely feeling the terrifying squeeze of the 2008 financial crisis in their own households.
And yet that night, that small town raises an astonishing $125,000. People are writing checks they probably shouldn't be writing. There's a quote from a local businessman in the text that just gutted me.
What does he say?
He walks up, hands over his contribution with tears in his eyes, and says to the author, "Just tell them that it comes from a little town in the mountains of Colorado so that their daughters can go to school."
Wow. It really forces you to analyze the psychology of generosity. Why, in a moment of extreme financial insecurity, do people give their money to children they will never meet who practice a different religion in a country they will almost certainly never visit?
Right. What's the mechanism there? Are they just being irrational?
It's not irrational at all. It's a deeply human response to helplessness. In 2008, the global economy felt overwhelmingly complex and out of an individual's control. You can't fix Lehman Brothers. You can't stop the housing market from collapsing.
And macro problems are just too big.
But buying a pencil, helping build a wooden desk for a girl in a valley, that is a tangible, controllable variable. It strips away the overwhelming complexity of global politics and boils existence down to something universally understood, a child's right to learn.
I love that.
Giving to that cause provided these people in Durango with a sense of agency and hope when their own world felt hopeless.
It bypasses the wallet entirely and goes straight to our shared decency. And that incredible generosity from places like Durango is exactly what funded the next chapter of this story. Because the mission doesn't stop in Pakistan, it expands.
It moves into its most challenging, dangerous frontier yet.
Afghanistan. And the way this expansion happens is honestly the most cinematic part of the entire text. It reads like a movie script.
This is a critical turning point in the narrative. Because up until now, the girl effect was largely a theory brought into these valleys by an outsider, the author trying to convince the local elders.
Right, he was doing the pushing.
But the scene in Afghanistan shows a fundamental shift. It shows the desire for education transforming into an urgent grassroots demand coming from the inside.
Let's set the stage for this. The year is 1999. The location is the Irshad Pass on the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. This is an incredibly harsh environment. The ground here is free of snow for only 4 months out of the entire year.
It's desolate.
The author is standing there with Sarfraz Khan, who is this incredible character, an ex-commando with a crippled hand who acts as a project manager for the Institute. They are huddled together, sipping salt tea in the freezing rain, just trying to stay warm.
And suddenly, the quiet is broken. Sarfraz spots them coming down the talus-littered descent. 14 horsemen, charging hard through the cold rain.
The text describes them so vividly. You hear the hollow clumping of the hooves hitting the rocks, the clanking of steel. The leader of the horsemen is wearing a Soviet-era pile cap with ear flaps. He has a battered British Lee Enfield rifle strapped to his back, and he's wearing dark corduroy pants that are literally shiny with mutton grease.
These men are heavily armed with AK-47s and cartridge belts draped over their shoulders.
Right, so they ride up, pull their horses to a sudden halt, and leap from their saddles in absolute military unison. If you are standing there, you have to think you are about to be robbed or killed.
It would be terrifying.
This looks exactly like a scene out of a 13th century epic Genghis Khan's descendants riding out of the freezing mist. But they haven't come for a fight. They haven't come to demand weapons or food or money. They're on a totally different kind of mission.
The leader reveals that they are emissaries. They've been sent by a man named Commandant Abdul Rashid Khan. He is the leader of the last group of Kyrgyz people living in a region called the High Pamir, which is known locally as the rooftop of the world.
And the High Pamir is unbelievably isolated. It's an incredibly impoverished area where families constantly teeter on the very edge of starvation. They lack almost every modern amenity. And yet, what the command hand wants more than anything else, the reason he sent 14 armed men riding through a freezing storm, is literacy for their children.
They have heard rumors. The informal communication networks in these mountains are incredibly robust. Whispers have made their way across the Hindu Kush about an American school builder who travels to the Forgotten Valleys.
And crucially, the detail that caught their attention was that he educates girls.
The urgency of this encounter is just palpable. The emissaries point out that the first major winter storm is already descending on the pass. If these horsemen don't turn around and ride back over the mountain immediately, they'll be trapped by the deep snow until spring.
Oh, wow. Talk about pressure.
They have literally raced a blizzard to intercept this one guy, demanding to know if he will commit to coming to Afghanistan to build a school for their daughters.
It completely upends the traditional narrative of humanitarian aid. They are not waiting passively for charity to arrive. They are actively demanding the infrastructure for their own intellectual future.
And this single tense encounter in the freezing rain sparks what becomes a massive 10-year saga to build a school next to the old Kyrgyz burial grounds.
It beautifully, perfectly loops back to everything we've talked about today in this deep dive. The girl effect is no longer just a sterile economic theory printed in a Yale journal. It is an urgent, fierce, undeniable demand coming from the most isolated, rugged, heavily armed societies on the planet.
It perfectly synthesizes the entire scope of the source material. You start with the raw, undeniable data proving the macroeconomic value of educating girls.
Then you move to the agonizing reality of women like Nazreen Beg.
Exactly. Whose 10-year wait proves the immense cultural patience required to navigate local power structures like the Tanzine. You have the foundational philosophy of the 3 cups of tea, proving that the emotional bridge of trust must be built long before the physical structure of a school can be raised.
And finally, you have the Kyrgyz horsemen, proving that once the fire of education is lit, the demand for it becomes an unstoppable force of nature.
It has been an incredible journey through these sources. We went from the abstract data of 20% income bumps down into the freezing dirt where Chocho was writing with a stick.
From the roaring Braldu River, where a bridge had to be built out of thin air just to prove a point, to a crowded gym in Durango, where everyday Americans emptied their pockets during a financial meltdown.
It all comes back to that one central truth.
Absolute patience and a deep, unwavering respect for local culture are the true, lasting currencies of change.
And it's crucial to realize that the philosophy of the 3 cups of tea isn't just a niche strategy for surviving the Himalayas. It's a universal necessity for human interaction.
Oh, totally. It applies everywhere.
Whether you are navigating a complex corporate merger, dealing with a fractured family dynamic, or trying to organize a project in your own neighborhood, building the relationship before you try to build the structure is the only way to ensure that what you build actually stands the test of time.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. We've seen in these sources that a single year of primary education can permanently alter the economic future and the infant mortality rate of an entire village in the Karakoram.
But we've also seen that it requires a decade of agonizing, patient, ego-free relationship building to actually achieve it.
So look around your own life. Look at your own city, your own workplace. What deeply impactful small-scale interventions are we entirely overlooking in our own local communities simply because we lack the patience to sit down and drink 3 cups of tea with our neighbors?